Hello and welcome to Fire Headlines, where we discuss the hottest topics in fire service news. I'm your host, Samantha Didion. This week, we have Chief Kim Zagaris joining Chief Ken Kenna on the panel. Chief Z is WFCA's Senior Operations Advisor and is here to discuss our topic of the recent hurricanes that have hit, and more specifically, how the Western Fire Chiefs Association member resources are contributing to the hurricane efforts. First, Chief Z, I want to thank you for joining us today and welcome you back to Fire Headlines.
Thank you. Good day.
Yeah, I think the last time you were on the show, we were discussing the Maui wildfires. And today, obviously, we're discussing another natural disaster as the death toll from Hurricane Helene is reaching about 300 now. So I want to start off by asking if you can give us an overview of how WFCA member departments are contributing to the hurricane response efforts.
So several of our members in a couple of different states actually are part of the National Urban Search and Rescue Program that is managed in conjunction with FEMA and those agencies. Okay, we have like Los Angeles City Fire, Los Angeles County, we have Menlo Park, we have Oakland Fire, we have Orange County Fire Authority, we have Riverside City, we have Sacramento, and San Diego Fire Rescue. Those are 8 in California, but also Utah, Nevada, and Washington all have teams as well that are part of the national USAR program underneath FEMA. And they have a capability of being deployed as what we call for a full type 1, like you would use for major structural collapse and capability that's there. On top of that, they can be broken down in different under type 3 USAR. They can be broken down a little bit further if the need arises. And in this particular case, they had both type 1s and 3s and swift water capability that were requested, that responded out to not only one, but actually both hurricanes. And I think that Helene was actually probably the most devastating of the two hurricanes, and actually, I think when it's all said and done, will probably end up being one of the more catastrophic hurricanes probably there on the East Coast they've seen in some time.
Chief, a lot of the teams you mentioned, LA City, LA County, and some of the other larger teams, those are housed within a single agency, a very large agency, but not all of the teams are just one agency. Is that correct? It's multiple agencies coming together to form a team?
Yeah, in a lot of cases, LA City, LA County are pretty much their own, but even LA County sometimes has got a couple, other agencies are participating. Riverside is a component of several agencies, although Riverside City is actually the host of it. San Diego is made up of several agencies. So is Sacramento, Oakland, Menlo, and Orange County is pretty much their own, although they too also have a number of other agencies, no different than in Utah, Nevada, and Washington. They're a composite of multi-agency, although you have one sponsoring agency that oversees and receives the funding and then does all, is responsible for the coordination and everything else that takes place.
So a single agency like LA City or LA County, they have a variety of components to make up that team. Can you kind of walk us through what are the capabilities that these teams have that just structural collapse and swift water rescue? We see a lot of that, especially with the hurricane. What are the kinds of teams, or what are the kinds of things can the teams actually support in terms of a response?
Well, to be real honest with you, the teams themselves, especially when they go out as a type 1, there's about 80 plus folks that make up that team, but they can do everything from a major large structural collapse, breach, do what they need to do. They can search. They've got a lot of high tech equipment for not only with cameras, but acoustic devices. And something as simple as everybody loves is the canine component. And those canines, why we have a lot of high tech stuff. The canines are really still one of the best ways of doing business. There's also an EMS component. Most people don't know this, but the teams go out with a doctor, and the doctor actually takes care of not only our folks, but in case they need to take care of any victims and there's not the EMS component there in that local area is not available, we'll take care of the immediate until they can get them transferred. There's also the doctors will also take care of the dogs if something immediately happens. But in this particular case, during Helene, they actually brought out some vets and stuff to take care of the dogs because they're out there, they're tearing up their paws, there are other issues that are going on. And there's a hazmat component, believe it or not, that they're out there. And so not only do the people, not only do the firefighters need to be deconned, but so do the dogs. We've got swift water components that are out there, WMD component to the teams, but they're out there in swift water, especially in this type of environment where we've had raw sewage and everything else. So the boats, all the equipment they've on, the people all have to be deconned every day or after the event to make sure, we take care of everybody at the end of that day. And these teams are also, self-sufficient. They bring in their own Western fire shelters. They've got food and capability to do what they need to do. There's a component in there to, take care of their command structure to report back to either the locals and the FEMA incident support team. They call them ISTs, kind of like an IMT out there that supports them, depending on how many resources are out. So anyway, since the development of the urban search and rescue teams, they've really grown with not only capabilities but sophistication out there in all these years. It's really been an interesting evolution. In fact, most people aren't aware of it, but really the first time we put the USAR teams on the ground was really during Oklahoma City. During the Oklahoma City bombing was that first time. In fact, I was part of the incident support team. I was a planning section chief. And back then, we really didn't have the incident support teams. We put a command, FEMA asked to put a command team in place, and that was actually done. And it was pretty interesting at that particular time. In fact, you'll remember Mark Gallarducci just recently retired as the OES director for Cal OES. But back then, he ran the Cal OES USAR program, and he was actually the first IST leader to lead that before it even became an official component. So, California is actually, with some other folks, Mark Gallarducci and Ray Downing out in New York, who was killed during 9/11, and another guy by the name of Bill Lokey were actually very strong folks in that program that helped develop it nationally. People like Chase Sargent, some other folks in the country. It was a really interesting time to watch the program grow and a lot of positioning going back and forth. Everything was developed and put together. So it was real exciting to see where we were and where we've come today.
For any of our listeners who, like myself, might not be as familiar with that coordination between the local and national agencies, could you explain that for us a little bit more?
Yeah. So they actually have an agreement between FEMA and their agencies, at least for the 8 California teams. The state of California is also signatory to that agreement out there and helps provide support and everything else. Some other states do, some don't. But it's a great agreement. A lot of things are in writing as far as responsibilities, worker comp issues, and all those things. In fact, in the early days, the International Association of Firefighters got very involved with negotiating the agreements. In fact, IFF put a gentleman by the name of Dallas Jones, who was the president of 1014 Local for LA County, in the driver's seat to have him help negotiate where they needed to be, and for all those particular issues. But the federal government actually provided X amount of dollars to buy a lot of the equipment that they have, provide training. There's still a tremendous amount of funding that goes into from FEMA back to the local agencies to maintain that equipment, buy upgraded equipment, and also take care of all the costs, those things involved. Now, most people would say, "Oh, well, they probably pay for it all." Well, that's probably not actually true. In fact, early on, people really got into it because they had their own threat involved. But a lot of local agencies have a lot of their own funds involved, and the states have also assisted those local agencies. So it really makes a great partnership. just to store all this equipment. You'd be surprised, a fleet of trucks and trailers and all the resources that it takes to manage this. The inventory system that's in place. We have logisticians and planning folks, and it is just to turn on a team. Everybody coming in is going to have a quick medical evaluation, make sure they're capable of going out the door and taken care of. And it's like I said, so it's really developed into a great system. And
so it's you and I have spent a lot of time working together, deploying resources all over the place through our work with the California State Mutual Aid System and our work with FireScope together. It sounds like the ability to deploy task forces is much more sophisticated today. I would imagine largely due to the work that you have done. But can you kind of talk us through how much better are we at moving resources across state lines and across the country and to other countries? Talk to us about that.
So one of the things I would tell you is that originally the USAR program started out, they were going to fly people there and fly people back on military transport. Well, that's somewhat kind of gone away, and they mostly now just deploy all on the ground. Some of that's good, some of that's bad. Short distance not as bad. Long distance could be a big issue. I would actually tell you that I'm sure this is going to get reviewed because San Diego had 3 of their people seriously injured en route to Helene, and they were involved in a very bad traffic accident. And I think that it's going to get a little bit more scrutiny. Do we really need to drive them straight through? Maybe we need to go back and look at the airlift component and that particular side of it. But that being said, just with the national USAR program, there's actually a pick list that's automatically done and who goes, and so we don't leave entire areas of the country vacant if something happens. So that's gotten really good. But more importantly, this go around, the amount of other resources moved by other local government resources within a state moved through EMAC through the process is going to be monumental, and it's really going to be an eye opener. And for you and I, it'd be probably like, in California, mutual aid was pretty much the OES engines moving up and down the state until 1985 during the Lexington fire, in which we had the largest move of local government from one end of the state to the other. Well, nowadays, we move local government as quickly as we move the OES engines. And I think, again, for events such as, tornadoes and hurricanes and this, the FEMA system has gotten very good at moving things in cooperation with the states that are making requests for assets, especially if they have to be pre-positioned. They do a pretty good job bringing them in, just outside the impacted areas, so they get them in there quicker. But again, I think the amount of EMAC resources and other resources that are being moved this go around. I've already been in conversation with ICHIS, and we're chatting about that. And of course, ICHIS has started working on a national mobilization process a couple of years back, and then kind of fell in a little bit of funding issues, and that's getting ready to be turned back on to, and the real thing, and kind of in conjunction with the NEARS program that the U.S. Fire Administration is working on, we really, first and foremost, we really need to get a good handle on all the fire assets that we do have in the country that are going to be available. I think that's the key to start with. And then from then, it's, how we work back through the dispatch and what resources available and that they are qualified. USAR, Swiftwater, Hazmat, especially the specialized resources in which there's less specialized than there is, our everyday bread and butter on engines and medic units and those types of things that, we roll back and forth on. And even though we've got medic units, the real question is that the way we do EMS in this country, it makes it very hard to, how much can you send out before, you don't have enough to cover at home? At the end of the day, everybody's trying to make sure that while they want to provide mutual aid, they also want to make sure they provide coverage back at home for the citizens that are providing, that tax base for them each and every day.
It's nice to see the system thriving, to be honest with you. It really is.
I think it's a great time and a lot of lessons to be learned. Again, I think that the magnitude, especially when you look at North Carolina, the amount of water and mudslides in Tennessee and some of these things is going to be a great learning experience. Just in California, we do a great job. We've got a prepositioning program that state makes funding available for both wildland and other storm-related issues. And California right now is undertaking a process by looking at how we're doing a better job of coming up with the matrix and the science behind mud flows in those areas. So again, right now we've got a good system, but it really needs improvement. Years back, California asked for $100 million for local government to preposition through Cal OES, but that money, when it was all said and done, was 25. First couple of years, we weren't anywhere using those funds. Today's day and age, we're now exceeding those funds, and local government's going to have to go back to the state and ask for a larger amount of prepositioning fundings to meet today's needs.
Are we able to preposition the FEMA task forces as well, or is that still something that we're working on doing?
Actually, California could preposition their resources through their preposition program if they needed to.
Okay.
If you're to preposition, it used to be the full team of 80 personnel and all the equipment, well over $1 million a day. So you want to make sure if you're going to do that, you've got the funds to back it up. But there is a process to make that happen. If state wants to pay for it, and local and those teams that are part of it could do it. But California also, besides the 8 urban search and rescue, the national urban search and rescue teams, we have a number of state USAR teams as well in different different components in the system. But and they were put together because it takes a little bit of time to mobilize one of the national teams. Well, the state certified teams are not quite as robust, but they can move quicker and faster. They're a lot more nimble, and you can get them on the ground and then support them with the national teams and do that if you have an event that's necessary.
Got it. Thank you.
Earlier, Chief Z, you were talking about mudslides, and that makes me want to echo the point of Western Fire Chiefs Association is not restricted to fire only. So can you tell our listeners, what does the public need to understand about the multifaceted nature of the fire service work, especially when it comes to an all-hazard response?
Unlike the old days where you light them, we fight them, we provide so many services. You call 911 and if it's not a law enforcement issue, then the next, well, who is it? Well, kind of defaults to the fire service. But I think what I really like is that, it could be a mudslide, could be a wildland fire, could be a flood, could be rising waters, could be a mass casualty, you name it. The fire service has really become very, very diverse, but very complex in a lot of ways. That takes a lot more specialized training and capability, and not all agencies are the same in their capability. But what's kind of really neat is the regional approach that a lot of our counties or parishes or townships take into consideration. That maybe I can't do it all, so I combine that with some of my partners, and I think that's what it's about. And then I think from there, we in this country have a great mutual aid system. Why it's, I always tell people, California's got a great program. Florida's got a great program. Illinois has got a great program. Ohio. Those are actually the 4 corner states that chiefs use to develop a national mutual aid document. We've come a long ways since Katrina and that document was developed. And, the need to really expand and look at, how we've evolved just during this time period is tremendous. And the one thing we have is greater technology and greater situational awareness tools than we've ever had. That's the other thing that we're expanding in the fire service is better data analytics to look at these things. But we're also, our situational awareness with technology has really improved considerably, and it's only going to get better in the years coming up.
If I didn't say, you mentioned the Lexington fire, which was a seminal moment for me early in my career, and it was sort of my introduction to the California Fire Service in a meaningful way, specifically mutual aid. And for me, one of the things that I'm most proud is that we worked in a state, and you and I worked together, managing resources for supporting the state's need and supporting other states when disaster struck. It's wonderful to see how far we have come, specifically through the work that you do and the work that the Western Fire Chiefs does. The leadership team at the Western Fire Chiefs is really second to none. And I think pulling you in to help continue that mission has been absolutely the right move. And I truly appreciate everything that you've done. And I just wanted to say that.
I think, how I feel is that the system itself is, I've been lucky and fortunate enough to manage that system for 18 years as fire chief, of my 36 years with them, of 46 years in the fire service, but pulling some things together and managing the system for people. But it's really people like yourself and the other chiefs and organizations I've worked with that are committed. And I always tell people, it's better to give mutual aid than it is to receive it, because it's just a bad day. And people are very passionate about mutual aid. And it was kind of interesting when ICHIEF's Emergency Management Committee started. It was really about mutual aid. I remember we had 350 plus applications to be on that committee. I was lucky enough to be on the task force, and then 6 years as a member of the committee, only followed by 9 years as a chair. I just stepped down about a year ago. Mariana out of State Fire Marshal at Oregon took over, and worked with her, when she was number 2 of the fire marshal's office, and they've really developed a great program, as you know, in Oregon, especially after the 2020 fires. State can't do it without the support of their local fire service, who, now you have a program in Oregon that's similar to California, with a number of engines that state and other apparatus state has purchased and assigned to local government for that surge component. And it's kind of interesting is that our engine program in California was actually started in 1950 on federal matching funds. And a number of other states did it at the time, but California is the only one that has continued that program over the years and have evolved. We used to have 100 engines, now it's like 300 engines that Callaway has. But again, I think the harder part to kind of watch today is that our fire service as a whole is not maintaining, building enough stations, staffing enough people, enough equipment, and kind of back to the Park Fire in California this year. It was burning 5,000 acres an hour and outpacing our ground air resources like nobody's business. And I think, we're losing volunteers in the rural area, becoming increasingly hard. Unfortunately, nobody wants to pay more taxes, but, we're really reaching a saturation point. In fact, I kind of watch as we deployed a number of this California resources out of state for the hurricanes. We were kind of wrapping up 3 major fires in Southern California. And I can't imagine, if California were to have been more active, not sure we'd have been able to send some of the USAR assets that we sent to assist this go around. And again, it's a balancing act, and we always seem to be in this balancing act between hurricanes and tornadoes and floods, while we in the West are burning. And again, I think it really brings out that issue of, we do a great job and we're always ponying up and plugging the holes, but we're struggling. And I think, the fire service and ICHIEFs and us and the Western Fire Chiefs and all the other divisions are really going to have to take a more closer look at where we're at mutual aid and where we want to be, and putting a little bit more focus on this particular topic for the future.
Well, thank you, sir.
All right. Well, thank you, Chief, so much for joining me today. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If you don't already, be sure to follow us on social media, and we'll see you back here next week for more Fire Headlines.